So if you're thinking in the way of what we used to call a tool mindset, I have a tool that does this and a tool that does this, you're never going to reach that efficiency you need. You really need to utilize more of this platform-oriented mindset where it's, hey, I'm building my business on top of this platform where we are all working in a streamlined, cohesive fashion.
Walking around the show floor, I want to find the problems that the industry is really trying to solve, both at a hardware and a software level. One of the fastest growing software companies on the planet right now, as far as solar is concerned, is PVcase. We covered that they last year acquired Anderson Optimization. I'm here with Jake Anderson, head of revenue for PVcase, to talk about data risk and how data risk is negatively impacting the industry. It is great to get a chance to chat with you, Jake.
So good to see you again, Nico. Hope you've had a good show.
Yeah, I have, man. It's been really busy, but I'm glad to finally round out the show talking about a critical issue that you guys really are helping to solve. Can you elaborate a little bit on data risk and how are your customers facing it sort of before and after finding PVcase?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the idea of data risk is when you really look at this entire renewable development value chain, there is a massive amount of data that really flows through every step of the process. And what data risk is traditionally, when you look at how this has always been done, is every single step of that value chain has had its own tools and all of its own data, but none of that data talked or played nicely with every other step of the value chain.
Right.
So it really created this issue where the left hand was never talking to the right hand, and every single step was in its own silo, which inherently creates inefficiency, bad data, and that's what drives up that 65% of the value chain soft cost that we really hear about a lot in the industry. And with the goals of really scalability of renewables, when you have that level of inefficiency, it really just does not scale. And so we at PVcase, a big thing that we're trying to think about is how do we solve that data risk gap?
Yeah. Jake, could you elaborate a little bit on, at a software level, the way that you can integrate data in a more seamless fashion for your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we're trying to think about it is we have our solutions that really help automate every single step of that value chain, and we're really designing them in a way such that all of the solutions talk to each other and make it so that the data that we have in the platform ties to the data that the development and the EPCs really need throughout this process. So that makes it so instead of having all of these different tools with different data that doesn't talk, you have one unified vision of what a project is and all of the data that ties with it. And by doing that, it makes sure that you're really moving from left to right in that value chain rather than the traditional method of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and all of this messy data that leads to that inefficiency and high soft cost we've always seen.
Yeah, it's actually, and it provides a seamless situation for the developer to not have handoff from software to software and user preference in different silos in the organization.
Exactly, you're thinking about that completely right, because if you have those silos, a silo is inherently inefficient, and such this process is exactly that, a process. So if you're thinking in the way of what we used to call a tool mindset, I have a tool that does this and a tool that does this, you're never going to reach that efficiency you need. You really need to utilize more of this platform-oriented mindset where it's, hey, I'm building my business on top of this platform where we are all working in a streamlined, cohesive fashion.
Yeah, I think of it as like, my dad's a carpenter, right? So my dad had a toolbox, and in that toolbox, it was easy to find, a Stanley tape, a Milwaukee drill, some other brand tool. It's equivalent of someone, you often see this in the electrical space, someone saying, do you know what? I only have blue handles or I only have red handles in my toolbox, and all the tools are seamless and they all work together and there's lifetime warranty.
Exactly, and so it's really trying to bring that holistic point of view to this process. And you hear developers always, the thing that they come to us and say, we're really looking for that one-stop shop. I'm sick of managing 15 licenses that don't talk to each other. And even you'll talk to these companies that are very large scale companies, they're like, we just run everything ultimately on a spreadsheet
on
because
Excel.
nothing talks.
That's right.
Classic Excel. So we're really trying to move that paradigm to something that's obviously a lot more scalable and efficient and interconnected than a good old-fashioned Excel sheet, because that just doesn't help us to get to those climate goals that pretty much everyone here on this floor is really targeting.
Sounds like inside the engineering team, instead of thank God for smart sheets, you want to thank God for PVcase.
Bingo. That is a perfect way to think about it. And again, we really cover that entire spectrum from interconnection, site selection, design, and yield modeling. So really trying to, again, take that holistic view and create that nice efficiency throughout.
You know, Jake, it's evident from what you said about data risk that this is something that the industry really is trying to get their head around, and platform approach is a better way to resolve this issue. I'm curious, having been integrated over the last year into the PVcase team, your perspective now, or perhaps your enhanced perspective on ways to solve this problem for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's really interesting. When we ever first started talking to PVcase and we met with David, Doug, and me and my business founder is, you know, we really saw that we had the exact same vision. So if you look and rewind the clock, call it 5 or so years ago when both PVcase and us, formerly as Anderson Optimization, were starting, the individual areas we were looking at, those actually all used to even be 7, 8 different steps that had their own levels of data risk. So
right.
In the site selection side, that used to be 5 or 6 steps that we put into one. PVcase, the engineering process was iterations and iterations with CAD, where PVcase with their ground mount solution really brought that all into a one. But when we really thought is, as you work up that pyramid, is we're no longer trying to just automate individual steps of that value chain. It's how do we automate that whole value chain? And so when we got to talking, we realized, oh, we have nearly an identical vision of really bringing this together. And when we were looking around the industry, it didn't feel like most of the other solutions providers were thinking in that way, but that's really what we were all hearing on the industry. So as we've really worked over the past year, pretty much everything we do is future-proofed for this idea of anything we do, we need to make sure that everything from a project standpoint is passing through in a cohesive fashion, end to end. And how do we eliminate those seams between every step? How do we eliminate the seam between interconnection and development? How do we eliminate the seam between development and engineering and dev engineering?
Yeah.
And until you do that, that is where that inefficiency. So when we really look at the clocks and how this moves forward in the future, that's really where we're trying to create it, where you are a single development and engineering organization rather than 5 organizations within one amongst each of these functional silos. So it's only become more prevalent as we've started to talk to a lot of our user community about, you know, how is this coming? And we've, you know, spent the past few days here talking to customers and say, wow, this integration of being able to go right from my site selection right into engineering is really expediting everything we do.
Well, it's clear to me that in a world where developers are fast evolving, the technology that supports them also has to evolve. The light bulb for me is, how do you go from siloed to seamless? Clearly PVcase has figured that out. It's brilliant what you guys are working on. It's wonderful to see the integration and the cohesion between the teams over the last 12 months. My respect, kudos, job well done.
You're far too kind, Nico. And again, we always appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, what you're doing for the industry, again, of breaking down the silos of all of the different industry segments, because there are so many, is, you know, truly compelling, because again, it's not just the value chain, but everything around it. So bringing that visibility is key. So really appreciate the time today.
Thank you as well.